Hey guys, Liz and Shy here from the D20 Misfits. With us today is Chris and Mike, the co-founders of Roll2Heal.
Hello.
I
So what started you on this inspiring path? What's the story behind Roll2Heal?
Sure. So the original story that got everything kicked off. I did multiple deployments in the military. Had a buddy that I deployed with quite a few times, and he had reached out to me when I was kind of going through my own dark moments, and said, "Hey, I've got a table going. I think it would be good for you just to break away and do something different." And so I hadn't played since I was young, so I was like, "Sure, I'll come check it out." So I went and sat at the table, and the campaign ended up lasting about three and a half years. Enjoyed it, stuck around. About a year and a half into that, um, there's three of us that were veterans and two were non-veterans that were at the table. And the three of us would get together and we talk about VA stuff and deployment stuff and all that. And so one day, one of the other veterans showed up and he said, "I want to let you guys know. Um, the only reason I didn't pull the trigger over the weekend is because I wanted to know what we were going to do in our next session." And so one, we got him the help that we thought he needed, right? So luckily, the guy that had invited me to the team had gone through a lot of training previously and knew how to get him the help. But two, I couldn't I couldn't shake off the why questions. Like, why did that happen? Like, why was it so important for him to tell us to not go through with that? Right? That's pretty deep. So I started doing a bunch of research and I found a bunch of peer reviewed studies. I had just finished up my MBA at the time, too. So I just got done doing a lot of research. And so I was kind of in that mentality still. So I started doing a bunch of research. I found a ton of peer reviewed studies that talked about a lot of them geared at adolescents, but still talking about trauma involved therapy with role playing, which went all the way back to the 1930s, and then they started doing it with gaming and all that stuff into the 70s and 80s, and then it of course progressed from there, right? So yeah, that's what really sparked it. And so for probably a good 2 years, I looked to see if there's something else that existed, right? I reached out to other groups. I went to groups that existed, but most of them were doing stuff that was online or online gaming, or it was very nothing was in person. And so Mike and I have actually been part of an online gaming community for over 20 years, and we've known each other for the greater period of that time, probably 18 to 20 years, somewhere in there. It's been a while, and uh, we we started talking, and we found out that Mike was going to be getting out of the Coast Guard soon, and I kind of had some of these ideas of wanting to start it, and I at least needed somebody else that was going to be able to help fill in some of this stuff, just because my day job I knew was going to be too much to do both. So reached out to Mike and just told him kind of what was going on, and told him that I wanted to be nationwide in a year, and gave him all these grandiose ideas of what we wanted to do, and yeah, so we started April of 2025, and we've got 42 chapters now nationwide. So it's growing, and we plan to have the goal is to have 170 chapters by the end of this year. So, but yeah, Mike.
Yeah, just to Chris's point, like we've known each other for a long time through online gaming, and it wasn't until after we actually started Roll to Heal that we actually met for the first time in person. And like you said, he came to me in December of 24, and I was retiring in September of 25 from the Coast Guard after 20 years. And he told me the same story you just heard, and I immediately was like 110% in. I was like, "Yeah, let's do this. I see nothing but good things coming from doing something like this." So we started digging deeply into how we want to run the organization, what our goals are, how we want to approach everything. And interestingly enough, when we started the organization, we were only focusing on veterans. And we found out really quickly once we started in April that there was a lot of crossover between veterans, first responders, and healthcare workers, whether it's someone who was prior military who then goes into like the first responder role, whether it be law enforcement, firefighter, EMT, or their spouses. One of the biggest jobs that a military spouse does has to do with the medical field. So they deal with a lot of the same stuff that their spouse would in the active duty military. So they see everything that happens, and the amount of crossover and connections we saw, it gave us the question when people kept asking, it's like, well, what about the first responders? What about the healthcare workers? And we had I think, a serious, like 3-4 hour conversation about it between me, Chris, and our other our other admin, Mage. That and the big question that came to us was, why not? Why not serve these people? Like, there's so much here that that they all benefit from, and we can all connect each other to. And then I think Chris went on a deeper dive on doing more research and basically found that all three of those organizations are underserved in this particular situation. So we made the decision to make that shift, and I think it's been a positive change for the entire community.
Yeah, one of the things that we noticed too is like the SEO I was doing for our current marketing that we were doing just to get the name out for the veteran side, touched on a lot of the PTSD and some of that, and that SEO is reaching out to the first responders and the healthcare professionals too. So there's that crossover that we didn't even realize was happening in the background based off of these underserved markets that have so much in common. And if you stop and think about it, like it's now that we look back on it, it makes sense. Like we both have like the dark humor, we both have the PTSD stuff we deal with, we both have the isolation issues. We like all these groups, these three groups are so aligned. It's not even funny, right? With that whole, and then on top of that, what we haven't talked about, and I'm sure we'll get into, is like the tribal community side of it too. Each one of those groups has experienced what that true tribal community looks like, and then they leave it and they're like, what the heck just happened? Like, where did my tribe go? And so but they don't know that's what they're looking for. They just feel like they've lost something. So
Mm-hmm.
No, I completely agree, and I think we've been through some of that too, especially with the tribe. Well, a different tribe, but
I'm giving you shit about it.
No, I did want to ask, what was the deciding factor between using your tabletop games? I know you mentioned with the story, which I did see whenever I visited the Roll2Heal website itself. Um, but was there any other factors that you thought of before that, or was it just with that, with your friend, that you figured that was the biggest unlock right there? Not just like playing regular video games, but tabletop role-playing games themselves being a big, big key factor to help with PTSD.
I think when I started doing that deep dive afterwards was when, like, after that situation, because none of this even came to mind until that first situation happened. Once that situation occurred and I started really looking into it, I noticed that, um, I mean, even D&D calls itself like the greatest storytelling game of all time, right? Like it's all about storytelling, and like what do tribes have in common across the network there, no matter whether you call it a tribe of like modern day society tribe, or a Neanderthal tribe, or a American Indian tribe, whatever that is, right? They all have storytelling that like has passed on what their traditions were. And so that's one of the big pieces that we saw, was the storytelling aspect was the big connector of getting people at the table in person, connecting together on those stories that were happening at the table. And then that builds that trust with the other person at the table too, right? Because it opens up stuff like, oh, um, just in basic conversation, there'll be things that will come up, and it's like in the back of your mind, you might not say anything, but somebody else might mention something they're going through, And then it clicks like, well, I'm not the only one that's dealing with that, right? Like, because most people just isolate because like that's just me, like there's just something wrong with me, and so they isolate. Um, but then when you get this tribal group together where they're actually sitting down playing the game, there's some other cool aspects. There's an author by the name of Sarah Bowman that wrote a book that goes through these 4 stages you go through of character development. And one of the other things people don't realize, and as soon as you tell them, it clicks like a light bulb goes off. They, yeah, that makes sense. If you look at anybody that plays D&D or anybody you've played D&D with before, look at one of their characters and then connect their characters to that person. And I guarantee you there's multiple things in that character that connect with that person's personality or background, right? And so people tend to build things into their character that they want to try. They don't want to try it themselves yet, but they want to put it into the character because they want to see how are people going to respond to this. And a lot of times they're doing it subconsciously. They don't even know that they're doing it. And so they do it, it works well or it doesn't work well, they learn from it, and then they'll either adapt it or not adapt it to themselves. And so that's actually part of that book, the Sarah Bowen's book. I don't have the title in front of me, but I can send it to you guys later if you want to post it. But it goes through some pretty interesting, yeah, it goes through some interesting stuff. So the I think, Mike, the like we had part of that 4 hour conversation was also about we talked about that. We had another deep dive conversation at one point though of what does a roll to heal table look like, and like what does it consist of?
Hmm.
And one of those was it has to have a strong character development portion to it, and it has to tell a story. So there's games out there that are great games like Black Powder Red Earth, right? Like it's a great game, but there's not really like a character development side of it, right? You just pick a character that's already built and you run with the game. There's not a huge storyline development either with that, right? Whereas in you can spend hours building a character in D&D or some of the other, Pathfinder and other game systems that are out there. So there's a ton of TTRPGs that live out there that meet those two great, like those two criteria of telling a story and building a character. Yeah, so those were the two like connectors that I saw when I was doing the research and there's multiple studies that talk about that, about the benefits of those two things. So
Hmm. Yeah, the best example that I can give to what Chris is talking about is um, there was a D&D campaign that I played in that it was basically there was a war going on between the humans and the elves, and this is what the DM had set up as a history. And I told him that I wanted to play a human, but I wanted to basically play a neutral party. And I won't get into too many details, but I'm a neutral. I'm neutral when it comes to like political affiliation. Um, so I I did it. I didn't knowingly know I was going to be putting myself in a situation where I could see what that experience looks like being more vocal, and like I subconsciously injected the fact that I would have a family, and the DM kept like manipulating my character to go deal with something by endangering my family. And I was married. Like in the game, I was married and I had a daughter, and in real life, I'm married and I have a daughter. So there was that that subconscious injection of myself in that character. And like Chris was saying, like the social experimentation, like when when your character is presented with a problem, how are you going to approach it? And there were plenty of opportunities that social experimentation came into play when I was playing that character.
and I know I didn't have like my aha moments until I read that. Like I read that information of like this subconscious stuff that you're putting in. And I stopped and thought about it. I looked back on my previous characters I'd played and I was like, wow. Like I didn't even know I was doing it, right? But then you come to there's these stages you go through where it starts off as like a subconscious thing, then you start to like purposely play around with it, and then you're like testing your boundaries and limits with it. And there's like these 4 major stages you go through that's also in that book. So
Hmm.
Okay. I hear you have chapter houses. At this moment, how many do you have? And who don't know about chapter houses, could you elaborate on what they do and are there any differences?
Sure. So currently we have 42, uh, and I think out of the 42 we have probably like 15 to 20 of them that are like super active right now, actually doing things. They've really like taken off and done a few things. There's some stuff we've done too that we can go through of how that looks and how that works. But a chapter house is basically a chapter lead that steps up to the plate and says, I want this in my community. What can I do to make that happen? And that chapter lead then either becomes a GM or finds a GM, and then they find Roll2Heal members in their local community to sit at their table, right? When we first started, we of course got the pushback of like, well, can't I do this online? And the whole thing is like, no, we need you to have this in person. You're supposed to get past that like social anxiety barrier, to get everybody at the table to start really getting the benefits from this. And so um, there's again, we can discuss kind of what we did to get past some of the barriers we run into. But overall, to step back and answer this initial question, a Roll2Heal chapter would be a chapter lead. Eventually, the chapter officers would be set up very similar to how we have our administration, where you would have a president, a vice president, a treasurer, somebody kind of overseeing the game masters and so forth. And then you would have game masters that would fall underneath the chapter lead, that would be running those games. Both the chapter lead and the game masters currently go through, it's called VA Save training, which is provided by a company called Psych Armor. They're a nonprofit as well, and that provides you with not only knowledge of what to look for at the table when people are playing, to show concerns or um, telltale signs, like there's some type of underlying issue that's going on that they may need some help with, and then it has like the resources that you can provide. So it's that part of the training that they go through. So all of our game masters, all of our chapter leads also have to go through this training before they can even start a table. And then we also have a company that we're working with that's going to be doing a 4-hour training that's really heavy into safety at the table and kind of baking in some more of the training aspects and resources and all of that. So that's always going to be something that's going to be a living training program where we're going to constantly be updating that and making it better. But currently, so the VA Save is probably a 30-45 minute program. They go through it. They take an actual certification exam and they get a certificate for it, and they can upload that to us. So we have some type of documentation showing if they did the training. The 4-hour training will have the same. It'll be presented through a certificate. They'll have to take a little course afterwards to get that. Yeah, and then really it's like developing the community from there. So um, uh, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add to that before I kind of get into some of the things we've done to improve that process, Mike?
I'm pretty sure we'll get into that later, Chris. But if I had to give you like a visual of what Chris just described, imagine, if you will, that every state in the country is an umbrella, and you open up the umbrella and you're looking up and you see all the spokes that are spread out to basically encompass that entire area that's covering you. So utilize that visual as a way of showing that each spoke is a specific location. Like, I'll use Texas as an example. So the umbrella of Texas, and then you've got Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio. Like, those are all location areas within. So each chapter location is one of those spokes. And the idea is that we're building these chapters to eventually be all connected to one umbrella, and that we will build that community together, and continue to reinforce our one of our goals of community.
That's amazing. That, that's actually really cool. I like that. And there's a lot of people to be helped with that too.
Yep.
And to touch on that too, when you discuss the umbrellas, so there would be an overarching umbrella as well of Roll2Heal itself, because each one of those chapters isn't its own entity. They actually fall underneath the corporate umbrella of Roll2Heal, and we did that on purpose for multiple reasons. One of them for like taxation and liability reasons, but also so that way we can have a very tight we can keep all of our chapters kind of a tight group of, if we're changing something, it all gets rolled out to all the chapters at one time. If we update, a policy, it all gets rolled out at one time to all chapters. So they're not like these individualized chapters that are across the group. Now, each one of those are their own chapter, and they play their own games, they choose their own games, but they do that based off of the policies that we've put in place from the corporate level. So
Where could others find your information for your organization?
No, so most of our information is on our website, which is roll2heal.org. We also are very active on our Discord. The invite link to Discord is on our website as well. We also have a podcast that we stream every Saturday at 9 p.m. Central Time, called Roll2Heal Table Talk. We talk about some of the studies. We introduce different role-playing games that meet the criteria of the character creation that we want to have included within our organization, and then we'll like showcase a one-shot of that game to show people how the game is played. So it's not just here it is and go and experiment. You can actually see how the game is run. So there's that, and then our social media. We do have a Facebook group, which we do also have an Instagram. We are working on setting up the TikTok account as well. We have a brand new social media manager, so she's doing a tremendous job getting everything up and running. So as that develops more and she gets more hands-on with it, it will just be even more robust than it has been in the past. So yeah, and we have a email account, which is also if you go onto our website and you want to contact us, there's a contact form on there, so you can contact us through that, and we'll get back to you. We just ask for a little patience because we are extremely swamped and we do have a lot of going on. So just give us like a 3 to 4 day grace period, so that way we have enough time to read your response, talk, make sure we're not missing anything, and get all the information to you.
just to touch on it too, for folks that are listening or may not have looked this up before, it's the name is ROLL, the number 2, and then HEL. So like when you're looking at it, it's roll2heal.org. So, and then our main email is going to be admin@roll2heal.org, and then each one of us have our own separate emails after that. But yeah, and then did you touch on Discord already?
Yes.
Yeah, so Discord is really our main social hub. We've got a little over 1,200 members in Discord now, and so that's continuing to grow. We probably have, I don't know, out of the 1,200, there's probably 200 to 300 that are active pretty frequently on there, and then we have a group of probably 100 that are like on there daily, that constantly active. So it's really cool. We have some stuff that's kind of locked behind the membership wall, as well as far as resources. There's been organizations that have reached out and said we can use some of their resources, but it has to be behind the membership wall because they obviously won't give it out for free to the public. But they're allowing us to use some of those resources. And then we have some of the cool stuff like a GM workshop that happens behind the scenes, and we have some other stuff that's kind of there for the members as well, just as a perks, things that we've kind of the members have decided to put together because they thought it was something that they wanted, and they figured the rest of the community would want to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hear you guys go to conventions, and which conventions do you attend? Are these yearly or monthly? And for a follow-up with that, what helps you determine what conventions to attend?
Well, we we've only attended one convention so far, and that was FateCon back in end of September, early October, in Fort Worth. We are going to Gen Con this year, and that was made possible by our partners over at Nexus Gaming in Wichita Falls and Denton, Texas. And like he's been a fantastic supporter of our cause and helping us out. So he's helped sponsoring us. He made all the arrangements, the travel, the housing for us, so we could be up there to promote it. So we are going to that. We're also going to be running some one shots while we're at Gen Con. We've got, I think it was 13 sessions across the entire weekend that we're going to be running, across 5 different people who are going to be running the games. So we've got that going on, and we're looking at contact. I'm currently in contact with someone about joining for ReaperCon, and I'm still waiting to solidify that. And then obviously we'll go back to FateCon because the person who runs it, her name is Jerry. She's been fantastic and supports us 100%. So we'll definitely be going back there. Outside of that, we're always on the lookout for conventions. It's not a, oh, we're only going to do the big ones. Like if we have people local to the area and they're willing to do the footwork to promote the cause, there's a couple like little stipulations that they have to meet where they have to check in with us, make sure that there's no underlying red tape or hidden costs that the convention might put on us or something like that. So there's a lot of like little admin stuff that we have to do behind the scenes, but we're always open to going to conventions. If I had it my way, I would be going to a convention every month. I think that conventions are a great way to connect with people and not just to grow Roll2Heal as an organization, but just bond with everybody who has a passion for role-playing games is always a positive thing. So we're on the lookout for them all the time. So yeah, that's pretty much where the conventions are at.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to kind of we'd love to attend all of them, but a priority list of like, do we work on like chapter development or do we work on going to the conventions or do we work on like there's so many things that are happening right now in the background and things that we're trying to work on that it really takes that step of okay, what's best for Roll2Heal right now, to make those decisions. And so I know that there are some other, like we allow our chapter leads also to attend those. So it's not always going to be us that are going to be at those conventions. So if there's something locally that's happening in their location, we'll support them and back them on it and kind of give them what we expect to happen at a convention and so forth. But then they'll go run the convention representing Roll2Heal as well. So
Yeah, and we were trying to do Origin this year because our partners at the Donna Group are going to be there, but we were unsuccessful. But the Madonna Group did say, well, we'll leave a corner of our table available. So if you want to send us some props, like some flyers or little postcards or whatever, and we'll put it on that table. So if anyone asks about it, we will talk about you because we're already going to talk about you while we're at Origins. So even though we're not going to it, we have someone representing us, which I think is great to see.
Okay. What future endeavors do you have for Roll2Heal?
well, I think I added kind of put in like so. I've always been very ambitious, and I tend to set some pretty extreme goals on purpose. Like I think that you should always be in a position of feeling a little uncomfortable with your goals, and because they're hard to reach. Mike tends to be like the person in the background that's saying, okay, like reel it back in a little bit. Like this is what we can do, right? And so we tend to work together well on that. And currently, I think the 170 is where we landed at what we think is achievable. It's still a stretch goal, It's still going to be difficult to hit, even going to Gen Con and so forth. But um, there's a lot of stuff that we're trying to do currently in house to make all of that happen, which to step back and kind of talk about where we are currently compared to where we think we'll be in a year. Last year was all focused on building our foundation and the 501c3, and that was a huge endeavor by itself, right? We didn't hire a lawyer, we didn't do any like we did all the 501c3 paperwork ourselves and really like went through that whole process. Eventually had a CPA go through it with us at the end to like kind of check it off and say it was good. But and then building the foundation, all those conversations we had of like what is Roll2Heal, what is our core, like all of that stuff. This year is more of the focus of okay, we know what our core is, we've got the 501c3 done. Now it's what do we need to do to help the chapters grow? And so we've got a really cool program now where we're developing. We're I've been using a lot of integration and not from like the artistic side, but just from the workload side of research and all this stuff of all these new AI programs that are in place, right? Of like being able to research things fast and get information done. Um, and so we're using that and putting a prompt together where when somebody comes in that's brand new, they can give us their city and state. We put all that information in, and it actually builds them a chapter intelligence report that tells them all the venues that are in their location, gives them all the information of where they should be reaching out locally, provides them all the contact information, phone numbers, and it even gives them some like a 30-day checklist of how to get a table up and running within 30 days from the time that they started. And one of the other cool things that we got out of that, which there's no way we could have done it without some of these tools, is we had somebody reach out and ask us about some ADA stuff, and they had disabilities and not being able to do something. And so we were able to build an ADA chapter intelligence report that actually found all the venues that were ADA compliant, actually found them a way to get from point A to point B based off of things that were in their community and their county that they weren't even aware of because they were immobile. So there's been some really cool stuff that we've been able to put together on that side of the house. And um, from the before that existed to today, um, the chapters that we've seen that have come on board that have utilized that tool, we've literally seen them build a chapter in 2 weeks. So, whereas in before it was taking months. And so just having all that information up front and like having that backing of it has been helpful. Um, the other side of that, of course, is getting the fundraising together, right? Having the financials and all the stuff to be able to do all of this, and so that's another big push right now is our grant writing. And again, we've written a very strong grant writing proposal. We've got a lot of local stuff because a lot of grants require you to have 2 years of time behind you before you can even apply to a lot of the grants. So we're finding a lot of local grants that are going to be helping us, and we've already had people reach out to local organizations and companies, and they've just asked us like, okay, what do you need? Like we can do in-kind donations, not cash or whatever. So um, that's super helpful too. And then we have in-kind donation stuff within the venues too. So when somebody uses a venue, if the venue would normally charge like a table fee or an entrance fee, they're able to capture that, and then we can give them an in-kind donation so they can write that off on their taxes at the end of the year for their business purposes. So those are some of the big things that we've done so far, and we're constantly trying to improve on that. The next big push is um, our current group that we've reached is between the ages of like 35 and 45. Like that's a heavy section of our group that we've reached so far, and so we want to expand on that and find the younger community too, and start bringing them in. And that's part of why we teamed up with the new social media manager as well. I mean, she's super qualified at what she does, but then also she is in the younger generation, so she knows how to speak to that group better. But then also, um, the biggest thing is we want to make sure with all of these changes we're doing and everything that we're trying to change moving forward, that we never lose our purpose and our core reason for existing. So that's another big part of it. But yeah, so Ultimately, 170 chapters by the end of this year. We'd like to see 3 tables at each chapter. So you're talking a little over 3,000 members at that point. And then my goal that I've set for us as an organization is by 2032 to be in every county nationwide across the United States. Possibly at that point, we've already had some discussion with people that want us to bring it into Canada. And so maybe doing like sister organizations internationally as well in the future. So.
Something that Chris overlooked too is one of our goals is that we want to have what's called a chapter startup package, and essentially this would include everything that you would essentially need to start a table. The GM's book, the player's handbook, the monster manual. We're using D&D as a base of that package, but it doesn't necessarily just have to be D&D. It can be, Pathfinder, Delta Green, any variation of role playing game. But basically, it would have that. It would have character sheets. It would have notebooks, pencils, the little 2.5D vinyl characters, a playmat, vis-a-vis markers so you could write on the playmat, water bottles, like every little thing that you could think of. The idea is that this package would be there to allow a person to join the organization and not have to spend a dime to play. We would have all the materials available to them. So that's the idea behind the startup package. And obviously, as we grow, and Chris already mentioned it briefly, when we have people who've given us permission to use their material through their PDFs, same thing. They have access to those, so they'll have access to a digital version of the books. Obviously, not D&D because they're very strict on their stuff, but we have had people come up and say that their material is available to us. Like the Badana group, they just came out with a game called Branch Riders, and they told us that we're allowed to use their stuff and give it to our members to use. So we have a PDF version of that for our members. So there's things like that. And the idea is that we're never going to charge our members a dime for like a membership fee or materials or things like that. If people have their own materials and they're bringing it and they're willing to share it, that's awesome. We just want to have something in place that never has to be a question of, oh, well, I can't afford to play because I can't buy the book, I can't buy the dice, I can't buy the materials. It's like we want that to be a thing that is not a barrier. The only barrier to entry is yourself being willing to step through the door and join us.
And to piggyback on that, we actually wrote the no fee, no dues into our bylaws. So that's a core thing of Roll2Heal. We're never going to charge a fee. We're never going to charge a due for somebody to be able to sit at a table. So there's just no reason that barrier should ever exist. So,
Yep.
yeah. And then, other things that we're looking at is for people that are like, well, I've never played TTRPGs before. I'm not sure if I want to commit to a campaign. Going back to Branch Riders, it's a very good system to use for one shots. And so we're talking about when we're rolling out brand new chapters and getting people at the table. Doing a session 0 and a one shot so people can get a feel for it and decide whether or not this is for them or not. So that way they don't come in feeling like they're committed to having to be there for a year long or more campaign. So. But we plan to expand for sure.
Now, what words of encouragement would you give for anyone watching this right now that is suffering from PTSD, that maybe they're not sure about, TTRPGs yet, or they haven't found their own little mini tribes? What would you tell them? Anyone watching this right now?
First, I tell them, go to our Discord. There's no barrier there. There's no commitment. There's no, right? You're going to jump in there, and we have an awesome group of people in our Discord already. So worst case scenario is you're going to go in there, and we've created some fun. What would those be called? Uh, when you first come in and it gives you like your status in like before you become a member.
Oh, the titles.
Yeah, the titles. So we've created some fun titles where like you're a flump or like these things where you're just kind of like watching from a distance, like you're not really sure if you want to be part of it. And we've seen that a lot with our organization as people will come in and sit for a month or so before they decide to really start getting involved, and then all of a sudden you'll see them starting to really chat more and things like that, which is awesome. But the other side of it too is like there's there's a big reason that in our purpose statement, we, although PTSD is included, it's not the reason that we're doing this. Like, we're doing it to build community. So don't think that, like, you have to, like, one, you're not attaching yourself to the stigma, and two, you don't have to be diagnosed with anything to sit at our table, right? We're literally just trying to build a community of like-minded people that want that tribe again, that want to be around other people locally that they can rely on. So, um, and yeah, that's I guess words of encouragement would be, um, yeah, jump on Discord, and then if there's not already a local chapter, we can help you get that started. It's not difficult to do. And then two, uh, yeah, don't be afraid to come out and just say hi. So especially at the chapters, if there's a chapter near you, drop in. Nobody's gonna force you to play. If anything, you can observe, things like that. So
I would say, like and one thing to point out too is that we're never going to ask what ails you. Like that's never going to be a question that comes out of our mouth. If you feel comfortable enough to share that stuff, we have ears, we listen. Like I've seen it multiple times through conversations on our Discord. People will come on there and they will vent their frustrations and things that are aggravating them, and people genuinely listen and support and encourage one another. I mean, I've seen people, with the imposter syndrome of, not sure if they're, qualified enough to do this job that they have an interview for. And the words of encouragement that our other members have given people like that, and just the, support and, just general care to see amongst them. And if you're someone with PTSD, like Chris said, just joining the Discord and just being that fly on the wall and seeing how the community is, and just like seeing that communication, eventually maybe you work up the courage to, interact, say something, even if it's just hello, introducing yourself, things along those lines. Like you'll be surprised at how well the community welcomes you in the Discord. We're very strict about you know not being judgmental. Nothing like that. We want people to come in. We don't want people to feel like there's judging, questioning whether they're actually a service member or not. There's none of that going on. We genuinely want people to come in and open themselves up to what we're doing and not force them to open up. Like you see that sometimes when groups are like, "Oh, well, we support veterans," and then they're like, "So what did you do?" And then they can be like, "Oh, well, I was a yeoman in the army," and they're like, "Oh, paper pusher," like they'll give you a bunch of crap for that and then ostracize you. We have that camaraderie, but it's like the playful camaraderie. Like, a lot of the people who are prior Marines, they like to talk about how they enjoy eating crayons. And then our Army people talk about eating the dirt. And then, I've heard it several times about from being in the Coast Guard how I'm a puddle pirate. It's like, it's all playful fun. And it goes back to being in that service and that camaraderie. So it's not ill intent, and everyone knows it's not. So, like, yeah, I would just say the PTSD. Like, I deal with my own every now and then, so I can see like how it can be concerning. But you're never going to know what is available to you in this world unless you're willing to step out of your shadow a little bit.
We actually have an entire channel too that's called it's an anonymous venting, and it literally does not list who vented. You can go on there and just vent, and it pops up, and other people can read it, and they'll give you kind of words of encouragement and so forth in there, but nobody knows who it was that actually wrote the vent itself. So it's kind of a cool little thing that our CTO, I believe it was our CTO that put that in there, um, but yeah, it's either way. And then on top of that too, the other thing I want to put out there is you don't have to be a veteran first responder healthcare professional. We have family members that are involved. We have civilians that just want to be a part of it because they're grandparents or they have some tie or their father or they're like whatever that tie is, right? Or they never joined but they wanted to be part of the community. Whatever that is that they supported. Um, we, we're not gonna ostracize people for not being one of those three core groups. The only thing we have in our bylaws is if we have a table of our core groups that are playing, and somebody outside of the core group wants to sit at the table, it has to be 100% unanimous that everybody says yes to that person sitting at the table with them. Only because some people don't like to share their experiences with other people that don't have those experiences. Only because we've been there. I know myself and other people that have experienced combat um, have been in a situation of like people that haven't experiences don't always get your point of view. And so some people want that at the table, where it's just a group of people that have had some of their own experiences that they can vent to, right? So it just depends on the table and the person that's at the table, but we'll never push somebody away. And even if you came in that specific table, said no, there'll be another table available in that chapter guaranteed. So, or we can make one happen. So.
Well, thank you guys so very much for coming on here, Chris, Mike. Roll2Heal is it's inspiring. It's very noble. It's good to hear that there's something out there that people can look up to, and we hope it expands. Like you guys, your goals, your ambitions, to get to where you guys need to for this. We, even the D20 Misfits, we want to see that grow. And it to help as many as it can for this. We also have a veteran in our group, actually, Viking, who was in Air Force, and we know how it is. He's talked to us, and we understand when it comes to trying to playing a game to also make sure you don't trigger anything, but to still have fun, to help distract, to alleviate. And we've seen that whenever he's played, because we're also haunt actors. We scare people for a living too. So when we see like a completely different thing where he's also in his own like a complete different world other than like the one he's with D&D or any kind of TTRPG, we've seen ourselves how he becomes something else entirely, like with these characters that he's built, and puts that little bit of himself, different pieces in each character he's made to bring him to life, but to help him unwind and feel a little bit better as we play these games. So it's a very noble cause to do something like this to help people out there, and to be able to even the littlest bit to help you guys. It feels really good to do this. So we thank you guys especially for coming on here and talking with us. Well, we also have the others in the back doing their little tabletop right now for the Roll2Heal event we have going on right now. So we help with every little bit that it can also help you guys help reach the goals, and we hope to do a little bit more like this when we can to help progress Roll2Heal for you guys as well, as much as we can. But thank you so much. We appreciate being able to talk to you guys with us.
Yeah, thank you all for hosting the event and having us on as well to help spread the word. And yeah, we can't wait to see kind of what happens next. So it's been a wild ride already so far, and you know it's going to be it's very satisfying to watch this grow. So um, even in a selfish way, I guess. Like putting this together in a selfish way is even satisfying. But then looking at it from an organization side too, like it's to hear other people talk about it and what they see it, like their version of what Roll2Heal is amazing. So yep, we'll keep on pushing.
Yep. No, I reiterate what Chris said. Thank you both very much for this opportunity to come on and speak with you. It's great, and I really appreciate everything that y'all and the Four Horsemen Comics and Games is doing for this weekend and hosting this event. And I believe Frank told me that there is going to be a wall of either character sheets or something of what the event happens. So I'm very interested to see what that picture turns out by the end of this event.
That's what they look like. Oh, wait.
Oh, cool.
Nice. I like that.
Cameras there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Camera on that.
No.
You can post, you can take a picture of it later and like post it.
I have a picture
We'll
put up too.
that'd be awesome.
A certificate of demise.
Yes. I'm very curious to see what like the whole wall looks like with all of them up there. It'd be great to see. But again, I can't thank you guys enough. And Frank, I know he helped coordinate this, and he's helping host it around everything. And then the location there with the Four Horsemen games and comics, like that. That's awesome that they're willing to step in and help out as well. So just huge thanks all around.
I mean, honestly, they had yesterday card games going off to help support with the Roll2Heal. Today was D&D, and tomorrow are more games. But to see even just a community here that also helps, even whenever it's not like with us helping the fundraiser. Anytime we've come through this mall, to see different kind of games that people come together. They have like the Lorcana. There's a whole table. There's 2 tables there. So often I'm like looking up because ADHD. But there's giant at-ats. There's like 2 giant Star Wars maps people are playing right now, and there's
One's got like smoke and stuff. It's really
yes.
cool.
There's one that they made it look destroyed, so they have like cotton and lights going through it to have a destroyed AT-AT right now. So
Nice.
and I believe even things like this it's enjoyable to bring people together, and you never know whether someone is here to help or they're just here for the fun. And all in all, it's fun. It's to take your mind off things, and that's the most important part. No matter who you
Absolutely.
what you're going through. But thank you
Awesome.
guys, we truly appreciate this, and again, we're gonna do what we can here and there to see if we can do some more games and future endeavors to help boost Roll2Heal.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Thank you guys so much.
And thank you so much for your patience while I try to figure this out.
Oh no, you're okay.
Okay. All right. Well, as we usually do our send-off from us at the D20 Misfits, and from Chris and Mike from Roll2Heal. Good night.
Okay.
Good night.